Hello, my name is Andy Latham, and I want to welcome you to our SYSPRO Application Designer data handling course. As with the other courses, there are some prerequisites. I'm assuming that you've been through the Getting Started course, which covers the basic user interface and navigation around App Designer. Ideally, you should have been through course 2, which introduces some of the more complex UI controls. But above all, you should be confident in navigating around App Designer and have at least tried to develop a couple of apps of your own. Part of this course will be showing you how VB-script calls and updates, or can call and update data sources and things. It's not a VB-script course, but I will do my best in explaining what we're up to. And as ever, there is sample code with this course as well. Now, this course is aimed at discussing the different mechanisms that App Designer provides for accessing, displaying and updating data. And those of you who've developed applications in whatever language will know that creating, updating, deleting and querying data involves a huge amount of work, and it can be really quite complex. So what we're going to be discussing is those different mechanisms. So we're going to start with discussing the new Application Designer data sources. We'll then move on to discussing mechanisms of using VB-script, ADODB, ActiveX controls for querying databases, calling SYSPRO business objects, and also calling App Designer data sources from the script. And throughout the course, the examples we'll be using will be populating forms, list views, and charts. So I thought it best to start with describing what the data sources are. There are three kinds of data source in App Designer. They are query, transaction, and web service data source. And depending on which one you use, they can be configured to use business objects, SYSPRO data dictionary tables. It can access external database drivers like OLE, DB, and ODBC. And there's also a web service data source as well. A data source can be automatically run on application startup and therefore populate a form or a list view automatically as you start. It can be linked to an event such as a toolbar button event or a list view click event, and it can be run via VB-script callouts. Now, as you're designing a data source, you can put placeholders for variables, application field values, and data store fields, which can be injected into your data source command, and therefore the commands become dynamic. And at the same time, once the data is being retrieved, the output from these queries in particular can be formatted to populate form, list view, and chart. So to give you an idea, if you were doing a query data source that ran a business object, if you were to do it in VB-script, just simply calling the business object takes about 40 lines of code. And then formatting the output maybe to populate a form or a list view might take another 20 or 30. So for every data source that we can do, we say 50 lines of code. And if you've got 3 or 4 data source business objects you're using, you can see how much VB-script you would be generating if you didn't have this sort of thing. The data sources also provide a consistency of approach, which means that there's a single place where people can see where's the data coming from and how is it being done. And certainly with the custom data source types, these are the getting at external databases and web services. The data sources make the App Designer very, very useful for integrating to the outside world. So that's where we are at, and that's what we're going to be doing. And the next section will start with the query data sources.